Hello, we're here in Yom Kippur. Um, so this is a different sort of. I feel like I'm in Havana. I'm trying to combine synagogue but I wanted to read you something really interesting from a book I'm reading. Um, Let me look for it. Something very deep. So this is something that a rabbi tells the main character. And this is what he says. This is what he says. God created Eve out of Adam's rib. Why? Because first an empty space needed to be made in Adam to make room for the experience of another. Did you know that the meaning of Chava, Eve in Hebrew, is experience? To create man, God had to remove himself, and one could say that the defining feature of humanity is the lack. It's a lack that haunts us, because being God's creation, we contain a memory of the infinite, which fills us with longing. But the same lack is also what allows for free will. The act of breaking God's command not to eat from the tree of knowledge can be interpreted as a rejection of obedience in favor of free choice and the pursuit of autonomous knowledge. But of course, it's God who suggests the idea of eating from the tree of knowledge in the first place. God who plants the idea in Eve. And so it can also be read as God's way of leading Adam and Eve to confront the vacated space within themselves, the space where God seems to be absent. In this way, it is Eve whose creation required a physical void in Adam, who also led Adam to the discovery of the metaphysical void within him, which he will forever mourn, even as he floods it with his freedom and will. It is the story of Moses too. The one chosen to speak for his people must first have speech removed from him. He put a hot coal in his mouth as a child and burned his tongue, and so was unable to speak. And it was this absence of speech that created the possibility of his being filled with God's speech. This is why the rabbis tell us that a broken heart is more full when one is content, because a broken heart has a vacancy, and a vacancy has the potential to be filled with the infinite. I thought these were pretty deep thoughts. So now I'm going to the synagogue to say this go for my parents. It's a prayer for remembering the people that have died, their parents usually. And what I like here is that there's relative peace. There are people who choose to ignore Yom Kippur, but I think people are afraid of the vacancy. I've just met a couple here. The woman just married another man. First she was married, then she married another man. A lot of people go from one relationship to another. They have a very difficult time being empty. And I think it's very difficult time to just be at peace, not saying anything. And I think it's a problem human beings have. They have a hard time being with themselves, or just to be quiet. And especially here in Israel, it's funny. People always say something. They're always talking. They have a very hard time with the space. And if you don't allow the space, then you're not allowing the infinite to fill you. And that's very important. So people are talking and talking. And I also find myself as I talk sometimes thinking, why can't I just allow the space within me to fill? And I think that's one thing I would like to do more, to learn to live with silence. But in order to learn to live with silence, you need to make the space. You need to actively go about making the space. Anyway, I'm wishing you peace, light, and love from this wonderful place. of tranquility for me. This quote is from Forrestor, to the exact page 106, written by Nicole Krauss. It's a book that takes place in Israel just right now, where we are. Um, and I recommend it if you are speaking English and you want to read a book. It's not a book about Israel. It's more of an experience of an American experiencing Israel, or this Israeli who went to U.S. But well, I find the characters not very convincing, because I think she didn't write something that came from her own experience. And also, to use imagination, you need to use materials, the building blocks that come from your own experience. I still find that it's interesting book, and this speech is made by a rabbi that's starting an institute in Sfat. I think there's something about Americans that, when I read Jewish American writers, it's a very interesting experience. It's like they never really are able to find who they are, because the Jewish identity in the U.S. it's quite challenging, because the U.S. is so open, looks inviting, looks like anybody can be anybody, but actually the U.S. is not an empty void. No country is, and this we have to remember when we criticize Israel as well. Nobody in no country is an empty void. We all have some content. We shouldn't expect anyone to be an empty void, but it's a good idea to make that empty space and find the silence where there's no words. Peace, light, and love from this wonderful place. I leave you with one little bit of the ocean.